It's bowl season, which means there's going to be a lot of football games on in the next couple weeks. Should be entertaining.
And it's also coaching change season. The Nittany Lions have already gone through it, and we'll see what the shakeups mean for this Penn State staff.
On the Glendale and the Fiesta Bowl for the Nittany Lions, the Blue-White Pulse is next. And we welcome everyone to the Blue-White Pulse. Steve Jones, Audrey Snyder, DK Sports, and Jay Paterno. Great to have you. Happy holidays to you guys.
That's right. Happy bowl season,
Happy
Steve.
bowl season. That's all part of the holiday, isn't it?
It's coaching carousel. It's bowl season. It's all kinds of stuff.
Chip
Awards.
and dip night at Jay's coming up. Looking forward to it.
Trophy
Let me know when it is.
All kinds of stuff.
Well, the Nittany Lions are going to go to the Fiesta Bowl. It's going to be a 10-2 matchup against a 10-2 matchup. Audrey, when you look back at the season, how well did Penn State do?
This is a great fit. I mean, Steve, getting ready for this one, I'm sure just like everybody else, thought it was going to be the Cotton Bowl, which, again, would have been great. Back-to-back New Year's 6 games for Penn State. But I really like this Fiesta Bowl matchup, and I think you look at the location, and that's a big part of bowl season, Steve. Let's be honest. Great spot.
Cold front moved in, Jay. Feeling better about Glendale by the minute.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, I have nothing but great memories of the Fiesta Bowl.
Oh, I know.
6 trips, 6 wins against some really good football teams. So, obviously, Penn State fans, it's Happy Valley West, and hopefully it continues.
And by the way, gear up for a matchup, because look at these numbers. When you do the matchup between Penn State and Washington, look, party time at the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State got this thing rolling in 1977 on Christmas Day. That really kicked the Fiesta Bowl, Jay, into another gear.
No question. And, you know, when you talk to Fiesta Bowl people, there's Skinner was one of the guys that got Penn State into that game, and it really, those ratings and the attendance that happened after that game really took the Fiesta Bowl to a next level.
Yeah, no question about that. Now, let's get to the dominoes. When a college football playoff was announced, Audrey, Ohio State out, what did that mean then for the Big Ten and the bowls moving forward?
Well, it meant that, you know, they wanted to put Ohio State somewhere else. I mean, they weren't going to send them to the Fiesta Bowl for a 3rd consecutive time. And just looking at that, I mean, that's how Penn State got here. You know, that is the domino effect of, hey, let's send them to the Cotton, let's send Penn State to the Fiesta, because you want to mix it up for fan bases. And I know Penn State fans, some of them wanted to see the USC rematch, but I think this works out best case scenario for Penn State.
They don't want rematches, and they don't want Ohio State going to the Fiesta 3 straight years. Then there's coaching changes. Tis the year, tis the time. And Penn State's had to make some adjustments, because if you're doing well, people want people on your staff.
No question. You know, I think it's a good move for Joe Moorhead. I think it's a good situation. He's got some things to work with that'll fit with what his style is down at Mississippi State. But for Penn State, you're going to a bowl game, and now for Ricky Ronnie, now he's got to go against a really good defensive football team with fan base that's going to evaluate him based on what he does against a team that's really maybe the best defense they've played all year.
I mean, small sample size, but I thought he called a really, really good tax layer bowl, because people forget he filled in on that. All right, so let's look at Washington, Penn State, the matchup on paper, or at least graphically. And you can see there's not a lot to choose between the two, except that one part, yards against. Audrey, I mean, doesn't matter whether it's running or passing. They don't give up a lot.
Yeah, their run defense is really good, and I think that's going to be a great test for Penn State. You look at a lot of these defenses that Penn State played this year, they had the top-ranked rushing defense at that point. So I just think this is, hey, Saquon Barkley, presumably every indication would say this is his last game. Let's see what this line can put together for him.
Well, it's going to be the 4th straight game Penn State's faced a 3-4. So at least schematically and communication-wise, they know what they're supposed to do. But the talent level, led by Vita Vea up front, I mean, that is some nose tackle. That's 340 pounds of guy that knows how to use his hands up front. Really good. Coming up, we'll take a look at the college football playoff and the Nittany Lions as we continue with the Blue-White Pulse after this. Welcome back to Blue-White Pulse. Great to have you with us. Let's take a look at the Big Ten Bowl breakdown as to how this played out for the Big Ten. And you can see Gary Dolphin, the play-by-play voice at Iowa, does an awesome job. When I told him on Saturday that he had to do the game from the end zone, the massive depression on his face is something that, okay. Arizona, Purdue, Holiday Bowl is going to be Michigan State and Washington State, Northwestern and Kentucky in the Music City Bowl. And a lot of really good matchups here. USC, Ohio State, that speaks for itself. Miami, Wisconsin, and Michigan and South Carolina. So instead of getting 4 teams into the college football, into the New Year's Six like they did last year, not having one in the college football playoff got it down to 3, Audrey.
Absolutely, but I think you look at this, Stephen, I'm really intrigued by Northwestern and the Music City Bowl because you look at that and you say, man, this was a team, again, that put together a nice season. Should they have done better than the Music City Bowl? That's a tough one.
Well, it's one of those things their fans don't travel. I mean, when you look at the bowl game, they don't bring a lot of people. Now, if they said Julia Louis-Dreyfus was there, I mean, maybe if her son was playing for Northwestern, maybe they get bumped up like their basketball team. But I think, you know, that's what it comes down to once you get past the first couple games.
And Michigan fans are going to travel, even though maybe you can argue that Northwestern down the stretch was a better all-around team. But Michigan fans travel, they get the Florida Bowl.
Right.
So
no
I mean,
that's how it works. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, look. This is a business. I know you're surprised by that revelation.
Shocking.
All right, college football playoff picture. All right. Here's how this breaks down. I think everyone knows by now. Clemson and Alabama. Okay. Round 3. Oklahoma and Georgia. So Jay, I'll start with you and then go to Audrey. Did the committee get it right?
Well, we'll know in a couple weeks. But no, I think, you know, it comes down to an 11-1 team versus an 11-2 team. And, you know, it's same thing last year with Penn State and Ohio State. You know, the team with 1 loss got in. And I think, you know, that's probably the right thing. I mean, when you lose to Iowa by 31, and I know what it's like to play out there, I think that was the killer for them.
Yeah. What did you think?
Absolutely. I agree with Jay. I mean, you look at that, and I'm glad for my own sake that it didn't work out with Ohio State getting in, because Penn State fans would have been irate. I mean, the resumes were identical.
That's one thing boy, if Ohio State gets in, people get mental.
It would have been crazy. I mean, but that lost to Iowa, that was it. I mean, that was the nail in the coffin. And sure, Alabama has flaws, but I think you take on people say, well, you know, who'd they beat, blah, blah, blah. You give them, I think, the benefit of the doubt because they didn't get, you know, the doors blown off them. So. You
know, it's interesting, but they always have said a late loss is worse than an early loss. Yeah. Alabama and Ohio State both lost late. I mean, Alabama lost its last game. Alabama's the one team in the college football playoff that's going in on a losing streak.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the oddity to all this as to how it played out. But I'll say this, at least they were consistent. I mean, what they did last year is the same thing they did this year, right?
And it was a statement by the committee, and I know the Big Ten says, well, what does our conference title game mean then? What happens to the winner? But you know what? Some years it just doesn't break your way.
No, it doesn't. And also, when it comes to non-conference, I'm not sure what kind of statements they're making about non-conference in all of this. What do you think, Joe?
Well, I mean, if you look at what they scheduled as opposed to how it played out, Alabama did schedule Florida State for week 1 when they were preseason top 5. So you could say they tried to do the right thing with their non-conference schedule. But, you know, I think when you start to look at it, the Big Ten is going to have to seriously consider 5 years, 6 years down the road, do we still want to stay with 9 conference games? Because you know, if you take out that crossover game with Iowa for Ohio State, and that's Mercer, like Alabama played late in the season, they win the game, they have 1 loss, and they're in the game.
That's a really good point, because you have to play that extra game, and it was a crossover with Iowa that they had to play. Coming up, Allison Luthman will talk with Ross Tucker. We'll break down Penn State and also take a look at, obviously, the Nittany Lion matchup in the Fiesta Bowl. Allison's next. Welcome back and happy holidays. Welcome back to the Blue White Pulse. Ross Tucker does an outstanding job, not only on radio and Westwood One, the Dan Patrick Show, does a great job of covering college football and the NFL. And he now joins our Allison Luthman. Allison?
Thanks, Steve. And Ross, thank you so much for calling in with us today. We're really excited to have you on.
My pleasure. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've been up to State College. Parents had Penn State season tickets, so it's kind of cool for me to be on TV in State College.
Yeah, and you've been around the area now for the PIAA championships, and we have so much just going on nationally also with college football. But to get started, I do want to start here close to home with Penn State. So what are your thoughts when you look on their matchup with Washington for the Fiesta Bowl?
Well, I'm obviously looking forward to it, and I think Penn State needs to win this game for the season to feel like it wasn't a failure. I know that might sound extreme to people, and it probably is. Maybe I'm being unfair. I think if you look at this Penn State season, it's really a matter of what your expectations were, and it just felt like that they had a golden opportunity to really do something unique and special this year with arguably the best offensive player they've ever had in Saquon Barkley. While they still had Joe Moorhead before he eventually took a head coaching job, it just felt like, the stars were aligned for Penn State to be in the national championship conversation and be able to make the college football playoff. It didn't happen, as we know. They lost a couple of close games, and there's no shame in that. But I do think that there'll be a much different feeling about this season if they can end it with a win against a team like Washington in a New Year's Six Bowl to get to 11-2, as opposed to finishing it on a down note like last year when they lost to USC. So I think, sometimes people look at these other bowls and they feel like, it doesn't mean that much. I think this means a great deal to Penn State. I think they got a bunch of guys that they know that are playing their last game. Gesicki's another one. I expect them to play very well. I think Penn State will win the game.
And you just mentioned Coach Moorhead. We've been calling this the coaching carousel because there are just so many changes going on around everywhere. But how much do you think the Penn State offense will be affected by him leaving?
Well, time will tell, right? But I do think it'll make a difference. I think Rick Irani will do a nice job as the coordinator. But if you look at it at any level of football, even if you say, well, he knows the offense, he's been there for 2 years, it's kind of like playing video games. I can be there for 2 years and watch you play video games, but I don't have the controller in my hands. I'm not the one that's actually pressing the buttons and calling the plays. And even if you look at like the Atlanta Falcons in the NFL, they went from Kyle Shanahan to Steve Sarkisian, who's a very well-known coordinator, very bright mind. But there's necessarily going to be some changes, and it's going to be different and probably not quite the same. But I would also say this. We'll never really know how much of it's Moorhead and how much of it's the fact that they no longer have Saquon Barkley and Mike Gesicki, right? So it's going to be a combination. They'll still have some good personnel at receiver, Miles Sanders at running back. I think they'll have their best offensive line in a while next year, as all those guys will be a year older. So they'll have talent. They'll have a good team. I don't know, though, that they'll be able to put up quite as many points without Barkley, Gesicki, and Moorhead.
Yeah, a lot of factors to take into consideration. And speaking of, there's so many factors that go into the decision for the playoffs. And I think the one that got some of the most attention was that decision between Alabama and Ohio State for that 4th spot. So what are your thoughts on that final pick?
Yeah, I thought it should absolutely be Alabama. I really did. Not only the look test, but here's how I look at it, right? If you ask Clemson and Georgia and you said to them, hey, who do you not want to be in the playoffs? Even Oklahoma, right? If you ask those 3 teams, who do you not want to be in the playoffs? I am very confident that all 3 of those teams would have said Alabama. Well, then that's who should be in, right? I mean, if the teams that have to be in the playoff would say we do not want to play them, the goal was to try to get the 4 best teams in the playoff. That tells you that Alabama's the 4th best team. Plus, Ohio State, they lost a home game to Oklahoma. They barely beat Penn State. They were down by 11 with 5 minutes left at home again. And then they lost by 30-some points to Iowa. I mean, honestly, you lose a home game and you lose by 30-some points to Iowa, you should be disqualified from even being in the conversation. I thought it was a no-brainer.
And Ross, we only have a couple of seconds left, but if you have to pick a team, who's winning the playoffs for you?
I'm going to go with Oklahoma. I know that surprises a lot of people, but I've got a lot of faith in their quarterback. I'm going to go with the best quarterback. He's made most of the plays this year. We'll see if Oklahoma can get it done.
All right. Well, now you said it on tape, so we're going to hold you to that, and we'll see how that plays off. Ross, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And Steve, right back to you guys.
Thank you, Allison. And now we get to the fun part of the show, the coaching carousel. This is what the 2 of you have been waiting for.
It's all been fun, Steve. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
The 2 of you have been waiting for this segment.
No question.
All right. Let's start with the one that affects Penn State directly, and that is Joe Moorhead taking the Mississippi State job, and also Charles Huff going with him as a co-offensive coordinator.
I think it's a great move for Moorhead, and I think the fact that James Franklin then reacted so quickly and promoted Ricky Ronnie from within. I mean, Franklin said earlier this year he thought Ronnie was a future offensive coordinator. We weren't sure if he meant here or elsewhere. Turns out it meant here, and I think you look at the early signing period, Steve, December 20th, these kids needed to know who their coordinator was going to be. So now Penn State just has to go out and get a running backs coach in January to fill that 10th spot.
10 years, $75 million. Your dad, by the way, got a raise out of this when Jackie Sherrill took this Texas A&M job in the 80s. But Jimbo gets 10 years, $75 million.
I think you're going to look back at this, and this may be a turning point in college football. This may be where we've hit the non-sustainable levels.
Yeah.
There's tax policy coming with this GOP tax bill that may impact donations. It may impact grad scholarships when you have a grad student. Yeah. You know, a guy graduates at Penn State and he's in his 4th and 5th year. The graduate school waiver may be taxed. There's going to be a lot of money issues coming forward. So this is going to be a big contract that they're on the hook for.
And then Chip Kelly goes back to the Pac-12 where he takes the UCLA job. But I got to bring up something that we talked about before we came in. How much of an impact has the opening at Tennessee had on everybody else?
It was everybody's ATM. I mean, how many coaches got big contract raises after 1 year at their school because of Tennessee?
Yeah.
It was just an absolute mess. I mean, watching this from afar, I think I'm going to be in Tennessee soon, Steve, for vacation. Maybe they want me.
Well, Jeff Brom got a contract extension because they dangled the possibility. P.J. Fleck went from 9 wins to 5. He got a contract extension because of Tennessee.
Among all, they botched this with Greg Schiano. They had in their hands a guy who was a great person, a great football coach, and because of some allegations that are absolutely not true, they backed away from it. And that's sad.
Yep, agreed. We'll come back with more after this. All right, we're going to have fun on this segment. Well, Audrey said we've had fun on every segment so far. Let's keep the fun rolling. We're going to start picking games. Why not?
Boy.
All right, so it's going to be Iowa-Boston College. That's going to be at Yankee Stadium in the Pinstripe Bowl. So let's go around very quickly. Who do you have?
Iowa. I mean, let's hope for good weather for those poor people in the open-air press box,
I'll
too.
say Iowa, too, just because I'm a Big Ten homer.
Yeah, well, I like Iowa's football team. I think they're good.
They've showed they can upset people.
They're
They're
going to throw the
hard-nosed
ball,
team.
I think.
Yeah, and I think
Stanley plays that way.
I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. BC plays pretty good defense.
But not 6-4.
Yeah, no, not. I already did that game. Thank you. All right. Arizona against Purdue. All right, this is an interesting one. Rich Rodriguez, Jeff Brom. Let's give Jeff Brom credit for bringing them back. I mean, I give him a lot of credit for that. What do you guys think?
I like what Jeff Brom's done with that team this year. I mean, they've gone from a doormat to being a little bit exciting, which is, for Purdue, that's a huge step. I mean, a bowl win for them, I think, would be fantastic. So I'm going to stick in the Big Ten and go with
I think
Purdue.
Arizona wins big. That quarterback is as electric a football player as I've seen in a while.
I think Arizona will win big, and it's the only time all year that I know what Foster Farms is.
That's right.
All right, so
I do not know what they are.
not until the bowl came up. I just thought it was some farm in the valley. I had no idea. All right, Washington State, Michigan State in the Holiday Bowl. Now, this has some fun to it. Luke Falk, Brian Lewerke. What do you think?
Who in the world knows what you're going to get from Michigan State? I think that's what we saw the second half of the season. That's why I will not pick them, because we've seen them all over the place. Who knows? Their quarterback situation has been a mess.
I think Michigan State wins because it's very similar offensively, defensively to what Washington did to Washington State. So I think it's a tough matchup for the Cougars of Wazoo.
I think they're two teams that are very unpredictable. Yeah. You don't know what you get any week. I'll go with Michigan State because I think the more physical team can win a game like that. Kentucky and Northwestern. This is going to be in the Music City Bowl in Nashville. All right, you get to go first.
I go first. I like Pat Fitzgerald. I like the way they played the second half of the year. I'm going with the Cats.
Count me in on the Cats, too. I mean, I thought this was a team that got
both
hot.
The Wildcats guys.
Yeah. Well, the Big Ten Cats.
I'm not wrong.
That's right. We're going to win either way.
I am not wrong. Yeah, think of that. You're right.
But I'll go with, like you guys, I'll go with Northwestern. I think that, Pat's a good coach. I mean, I think he does a really good job. He does, he's one of those guys that gets the most out of what he has. I think the quarterback Thorson and Jackson make a big difference as a combo.
And they're healthy now, too, which helps.
Which makes a big, big difference. All right. Goodyear Cotton Bowl, where the gift is a set of tires. So Ohio State and USC.
Haven't seen both these teams play live. I would go with Ohio State. I think USC is not as good defensively as people think. I think it's a blimp-worthy game. I think this could be a shootout.
Ohio State has got to be pretty ticked off right now. I mean, I don't think they necessarily got snubbed out of the playoff, but I would not want to be playing them right now. They're hot. We've seen that what they can do they have so many playmakers, and in Jerry World with the big, grandiose scoreboard, I think they'll light it up.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Ohio State, but that's because I think they have I think Jones and Dobbins are two really good running backs.
Dobbins is really good too.
Darnold is a better quarterback. I mean, Barrett's an above-average college quarterback.
Unless you played Penn State.
Yeah, but I think Ohio State's defense is going to be a difference in that.
Yeah.
They'll get one more stop than USC will.
Michigan, South Carolina?
South Carolina.
Okay.
South Carolina and Michigan's they've been all over the place.
They're a dumpster fire.
Okay, I wish we had Trey here to pick Notre Dame, LSU, but we'll take care of that. Go ahead, Audrey.
I like Notre Dame. I mean, I think that the way the season unfolded for them, they've got to end this thing on a win.
I'm going to pick Notre Dame, but grudgingly. I mean, there's just this thing with Notre Dame.
LSU can't score. They can't score.
But still grudgingly.
Right, they're still out there, and they're on the 20-yard line. All right. Okay, these games we won't pick. We're going to save it for the the bowl show. UCF Auburn. Just some quick thoughts.
I think it may be closer than people think.
And the fact that Scott Frost is staying on to coach the bowl game before leaving, I mean, that's a tough spot for those kids to be in for him.
Georgia, Oklahoma.
Oh, Baker Mayfield is going to win the Heisman, and rightfully so, based on how he played in the big games. I think it's another one of those days for him.
Clemson, Bama. So you won't be on the next show, so you can pick.
Clemson, Bama. Oh man, I think you go Clemson again. I really do. I mean, Alabama showed they've been banged up, and they've got some flaws this year, Steve, and that's maybe surprising to some people, but they've showed it.
All right, we're going to zero in on Penn State and Washington State next time through on the Blue White Tailgate Show. Audrey, Jay, thanks so much. Allison, thank you. Thanks for joining us on the Blue White Pulse.